Hello YouTube, Adrian here again with Adrian's Tech Base. Today we'll be looking at another entry into my Tech Adventures diary. On the desk we have a mainstream GPU from 15 years ago, a GTX 460 made by Palette. This is a throwback, however I'm actually surprised about its capabilities so long into its lifespan. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's have a look at what we're actually dealing with here. Made with Fermi architecture, we're looking at 336 CUDA cores, 56 texture mapping units, and 32 ROPs, all clocking away at 675 MHz stock with a shader clock double that. Yes, Fermi is still using that ancient system. To support it, our guest today has 1 GB of GDDR5 memory running at 1800 MHz. There are also 768 MB units available, but nowadays they do seem quite scarce. This was actually the first GPU from the lot that had something wrong with it, and that thing was sadly not a normally repairable issue. It was artifacting as soon as drivers were installed. Because the artifacting was quite bad and moving, this suggested a malfunctioning GPU core. All the voltages of core were present as the card booted fine. I also had a quick look over the board, however there were no signs of missing components. Since it is kinda e-waste at this point, even working actually, I decided I might as well just try to reflow it to get the hang of it for future soldering needs. However, just before I show it, I wanted to take a pause and let you know that this is only a last resort option if you rule everything else out. Please, for the love of God, don't bake GPUs, it's not a way to go. After I stripped the card down and gave it a clean, I heated up the PCB on my 3D printer's heated bed. This is to heat the PCB somewhat evenly and minimize the stress that would come from the incoming blasting with heat. Then I applied a bit of flux around the GPU core to let it flow inside and under. Sure, it's not high quality, but it's better than nothing, and as prior, really there isn't anything to lose here. Once I was done blasting it with the hot air, I let it cool down and checked resistances again. Nothing was wrong, so it was time to assemble it and pop it into the PC. And to my delight, it fired right up and showed no problems running at all. I was able to run through the benchmark suite without any problems, so we'll have a look into results shortly. When it comes to overclocking, I decided against it. This is because this type of fix sadly isn't really a fix, but rather postponing the inevitable, so putting more stress through the card might just cause more harm than good. With that out of the way, let's get into the benchmarks, which were, as usual, run on the personal PC of mine. Specs will be listed down in the description. Finally, though, I was able to buy myself a capture card, so as the classic says, what you see is what you get. Starting off, per usual, we have Euro Truck Simulator 2. Using Full HD resolution with medium preset but 100% resolution scale, we achieved a playable 36 FPS average, 23 FPS 1% low, and 20 FPS 0.1% low. This obviously is no fluid heaven, but it's not bad either. Following that, we have the OG version of Skyrim. Using 1080p Ultra settings with FXIA anti-aliasing, we achieved 60 FPS average due to game's cap. Our 1% low placed at 30 FPS and 0.1% low at 15. Not too shabby, and you could pour loads of hours into it without any problems. Then I gave Civilization 6 a go. Using 1080p medium settings, we achieved 36 FPS average and 26 FPS 1% low. This I think is very fitting for a slow-paced game like this. Moving on, we find ourselves playing CS2. This is going to be subjective, but at 720p low settings with no FSR, we achieved 73 FPS average and 39 FPS 1% low. This is in my opinion on the verge of playability. The average isn't the problem here, but rather the 1% low, which might come to bite your ass right when your team needs you the most. Witcher 3 was another example of decent experience using something as old as this. Using 720p with low settings, we achieved 37 FPS average, 17 FPS 1% low, and 15 FPS 0.1% low. Not too bad in my opinion. GTA 5 is simply a classic that is still a popular title. Running Legacy Edition in 1080p with normal settings, we actually were able to set the sliders to about halfway. This resulted in 69 FPS average, nice, 56 FPS and 53 FPS for a 1% and 0.1% loss respectively. Definitely a great showing, and you can easily beat the game on this machine. GTA Online was also decently playable with around 10 frame rates on average in lobbies of around 20 people. Minecraft is the most popular game ever if sales figures are anything to go by. It is with utmost pleasure that I report that the GTX 460 still handles it in 2025 on the newest patch, running Java Edition on 1080p resolution with fabulous settings with 12 chunks render distance. We averaged 137 FPS, 79 FPS for 1% low and 38 FPS for 0.1% low. Definitely would suffice for that annual 2 weeks Minecraft phase you got. To round up the game benchmarks, we have Fortnite, running in performance mode with 100% resolution scale in Full HD and epic view distance. We got 38 FPS average, 10 FPS 1% low and 4 FPS 0.1% low. Settings can be sacrificed here slightly in order to achieve better frame rate. Moving to our synthetic benchmarks, we get quite decent showing, with this GPU being not far off the HD 5850 we had a look at recently. In Unigine Heaven, we got 702 points, which was a decent result. In Firestrike, we got 2505 points, which actually is faster than HD 5850 by 6 points. And lastly, we have 3D Mark Time Spy, where we got 237 points. Not bad, not terrible. Well, so that's it folks. As you can see, the GTX 460 still handles some of the more basic games played today. To say that about a 15-year-old mid-range card is something special, because surely we wouldn't be able to say so 10 years ago. Daily browsing is also no problem for this GPU, which is great to see. Question is, should you buy it? Of course not, unless you plan on making a retro PC, but in that case I would suggest spend the extra cash and get the 470 or 480. These GPUs, although still usable, are now relegated to obscurity, but that's as much as you can expect from them given their age. That's about all I have prepared for you today. Thank you for watching and can't wait to see you in another one. Goodbye.